Hello and welcome to Vulns Unleashed. I'm one of your hosts for the show. I am Brian Clark. We're going to have some other folks come on, such as your co-host, Kyle Swero. Hello, Kyle. Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, Brian. How's it going? Happy to be here. This is going to be a great episode. So, for everyone who was here last time we had one of these, you probably remember that we took a look at dompdf, and we actually were able to do an RCE using dompdf. So, we were talking with Developersteve, and half jokingly, I issued a challenge to somebody to try to make a reverse shell right in dompdf, so that we could use dompdf as a a potential, like, show that there's a potential to create like a reverse shell, and then report back to a command and control center, and ultimately wreak some havoc there. And lo and behold, we had the right man on the stream at the right time. Mr. Developersteve here actually decided to take that challenge personally, and he took it to the house. He did it. He really just knocked it out of the park. So let's bring on Developersteve.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on again.
So, Developersteve, I think maybe we should talk a little bit about your background and why PHP developers should fear you.
Well, I've been using PHP since version 4 back in the day, a long time ago. Back when WebSockets were relatively new to PHP. But yeah, I've been using it for many years now. I've actually been coding since the age of 8, back in the days of QBasic. But PHP in particular has always been one of those useful language tools to build out applications and, well, pretty much anything I needed. In fact, I actually built an Instagram printer back in the day using PHP and a Chromebook and an Epson printer. But anyway, that's a whole other story. I've been building apps for quite some time using it, so I'm still a fan. Wait, I actually have a graphic I can throw up now. There we go. This didn't exist, so I created one. That's how much I love PHP.
That's awesome. Have you seen the PHP plushies?
I have.
Oh, Brian got hit by the
elephant just ran me over.
He just got trucked by the elephant. Yeah.
Yeah. You've really got to watch the PHP runtime.
Oh. That's the runtime, but it gets out of hand.
Sorry, Kyle,
but yeah. You go.
So, yeah, I think maybe we can just talk a little bit about the sort of. Well, let's see. What should we start with? What should we start with, Developersteve? I think the last 2 episodes, right? Like they definitely go together pretty well. So, we talked a lot about like how in the last episode we did discuss how there were lots of vulnerabilities actually related to fonts, such as the PK exec bug, right? So there's actually the ability to run custom code in fonts, and that obviously leads to some serious implications. So I guess maybe we can talk a little bit about how we first covered dompdf and like what the RCE implies, and then maybe we can talk about how you took that a step further, made it a reverse shell, submitted the CVE, and the CVE was published. So first of all, claps in the chat for Developer Steve. The CVE was published. This is Developer Steve's first CVE, and totally, I sort of like leaving people with challenges. So we're gonna do this again and again each time we can. Every time I can think of a challenge, we'll throw out a challenge. So, Developer Steve, maybe we can pass it over to you, and we can sort of just talk a little bit about the previous vulnerability and now the reverse shell.
Yeah, that was a great challenge because I had never actually built a reverse shell before, but then sort of looking into it more, I quickly realized that particular the RCE exploit, like you could totally use it that way, and the I guess the challenge part from the code point of view was working out some type of PHP syntax that I could essentially open up a way for any command to be executed in there without needing to reload that file. So, and for those that missed the last episode, totally need to check it out because it's really good. But essentially. Oh wait, should I just share screen? I can show the code.
Yes, please do.
Okay. Oops. There we go. So that's the CVE. Actually, let me grab that's the CVE I got in. And as Kyle said, yeah, this was my first CVE as well, which was kind of exciting and super interesting to go through that process of reporting, which was just posting. There we go there. So for those that missed it, the last episode, let me just do a quick recap. But I know you're totally going to go watch that episode because it is really good. But essentially, how this works is it uses a font file loaded in through a style sheet to generate, which is used in a PDF generation to basically inject PHP code into an application. So the font file that gets used, and here's one I've had earlier, but I should have made the screen bigger. Essentially, inside the copyright in the meta on the file, there is literally very few fonts in this actual font file. But in the copyright section, we've essentially got some executable PHP. But all that this does is display an info page. So the challenge here was to add some PHP or get some PHP into that section that then ran on the actual server using the remote code execution that would allow me to run other PHP, essentially, aka the reverse shell. And challenge accepted because I worked out how to do it, but there was some pitfalls along the way. I think that kind of recapped it. Yeah.
Awesome. Just that it came from the license field, and I think the number one reason I posed this challenge is because I had a feeling you or any PHP developer, any pretty familiar PHP developer would probably be able to throw a reverse shell in there. If you have RCE, right, and all you need is to launch one command, right, and then you can definitely establish a reverse shell a way back, right, a pipe. So it's really just like the sky's the limit. It's just how creative can you get with it? And as we all know, Developersteve is very creative. It's in his name, Developersteve. So he got a little creative with it. It got a little hacky, and so maybe we can show people the difference here, between the RCE and now the reverse shell. So kind of like what we're talking about, establishing that foothold on a box and making it so you can establish and you can run one command, but if you can just run one command, all right, but now, just having that sort of reverse shell allows you to establish a much more if you're a malicious actor, if you're a criminal, then it allows you to establish a command and control center where you have an enormous number of hosts and you're able to delegate commands to them all day long in a very nice way.
Yeah, I mean, mining crypto, doing any sort of nastiness that you want, you name it, and using this, you could totally. Not that we condone that. We do not condone that at all. And if you do find a vulnerability, make sure you report it.
Make sure
it's a relatively easy process.
Yeah, you'll get a CVE, and you will definitely people will be grateful for you doing that, and it does make a change, and that's how we make software better. It's through people doing stuff like this. So definitely, if you have any ideas, throw your challenges in the chat too if you have any challenge issues.
We got a comment in the chat, a couple comments from Bald Bearded Builder. Hello, good to see you, buddy. it's been so long since he's used PHP way back in WordPress days. Wasn't bad, but I had to quit. Now it burns up. Yeah, so there's that. But also, Triple B was talking about a great idea for Sneak Live vulnerabilities and having dogs bite folks when there are vulnerabilities found in their application. So that's funny too.
Oh god, I just got to the last one.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think PHP. It's an old language. Meant personal homepage, right? And it was sort of after people were doing all those like bulletin board, style like websites, and it was like the advent of the public internet, so to speak, right? What people were using and interacting with each other just as casual users, or I guess not so casual back then, right? But PHP, yeah, people started making their own pages, and like the landscape of the web started changing, and making your own website became like popular, right? So I think PHP is a language with a very very interesting history. It's grown a lot. There's a lot of sprawl, and yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think it's a super interesting language. So there are lots of packages, right? In PHP, the package management system is kind of interesting and nebulous. So yeah, it's just very interesting to see. There's a very very quick response, I think, to this issue, and it was taken very seriously. And the issue's patched. It doesn't work in the newest version, so we can like talk about it and stuff like that. So yeah, I think without further ado, we'll just get right into it.
Yes, but let's give DevSteve a moment here. I also shared in the chat room the past episode for folks that maybe missed when we first talked about the dompdf vulnerability, which is this gateway for Developersteve to do the reverse shell that we're going to be talking through today. So if you want to check that out, you want to find out more and get caught up, that recording is up on YouTube. It's youtube.com/sneaksec, SEC. And I shared the link in the chat as well, but it'll be in the description of the video too for anybody that is watching this maybe later. That said, hopefully, I think maybe DevSteve, you got some audio stuff sorted out there.
Yeah, what can go wrong? I just realized I had my headphones routing through and doing some funky magical stuff, but hopefully that is better.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all gone now. You're good.
Cool.
Nice.
All right, so
nothing like
step through this now?
on the fly edit. I have more stuff we can go through and look at the code, the magical code that I used. Wait, is it magical? Yes, let's go with magical. So essentially, this is all documented also in our PHP Goof app for those that want to try it at home, including in the exploits folder. There's now 2 different font file types. So there's the original one we demoed in last episode, and then there's a reverse shell, the reverse shell OFT, or the font file. And what's different in that one is same thing again, like we were doing with the PHP info screen, except this time I'm using, I'm going to describe this as There Be Dragons, one of my There Be Dragons PHP functions, eval. You could quite easily use shell exe or any of the executable as well, which please don't use, like, ever. It shouldn't be there, but anyway, that's a whole other debate. But yeah, I'm using eval to essentially run any commands that come through. Now, this bit is kind of where I had to get a bit creative, because ideally, all I would have had in there was like a $_ get or a post, or like some type of incoming input command in there, so that remotely you could kind of do anything you want. Only caveat to that, and what I found in doing some testing, was I couldn't put any sort of single quote name in. So normally what we do is in that spot just have $_ get and then the variable name that we're calling in, so that from a URL get request we just have variable name equals and blah for a get request or a post request, etc. None of that worked. So I used reset. And what reset does is literally grab the first variable in an array. That is all it is. So like for this to execute, literally all you need to do is put variable name equals and then the code that you want executed, and that'll work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had to get a bit creative with this one, and that was the interesting part of the challenge from developer point of view, was finding that syntax that would work. The putting in a named variable in there for the post or get or put or whatever you wanted to use, it would actually load into that field. It just wouldn't execute on server. So, and that was just a copious amounts of testing before I sort of trying to work out what was going on, why it wasn't working, etc. But then we got there. So this actually does work. Should we demo it?
Yes,
it should work. It should work now that I've had audio issues. This will work because we've already had our tech moment. So here's one I prepared earlier. And again, you can try this yourself at home. The Goof demo. Oh, actually, I should post the link, shouldn't I? Let me grab the link. And I'll put that into the comments. So if you do want to try this, go just posted. That's a link for the demo, and there's full write-ups. Oops, wrong screen. There's full write-ups in this at the bottom of the README on how to do it as well. So there we go. So let's use the reverse shell exploit. So I'm going to generate PDF, and that will give me the link any second now. And it did not. Of course it didn't. Wait, let's try that again. There we go. So this is the link there. That's for the normal shell. So we did have some tech fail. All right, let me just edit that one quickly. So what's actually happening here, and hopefully you can see that, is in the dompdf library folder, there's a fonts folder, and essentially what it's doing is it's added in the font file, the exploited font file, in as part of its font library, just to save time for later. It's almost like it's essentially a file cache. So I'm going to grab that one there, and then in our exploit, I'm just going to swap that over. So essentially that's loaded now. And in fact, if I do in the URL, I'm just putting test equals, and then I've got php.info, which will run php.info. But in there, you could literally put anything you want now. So I can do, this should work, but this is the first time I'm trying this particular command. That should actually be putting tests in there somewhere. Okay, it did not. But essentially from here, like, you can run any PHP command literally from either a GET request, or you can also switch that GET for a post, and then be able to remotely send commands straight through from command line as well, and run anything you want from here. That was also the first time I've used it. Sorry?
So with the GET, I imagine maybe the reason why that one that you did where it was echo test is that maybe it's taking the URL encoded version of it and then trying to run that, and that might be messing things up. Whereas if you do a post, it might be a bit different if you took that approach.
Might switch it over. Yeah, yes, actually that kind of does make sense.
Okay.
And probably something I should have tried in pre-show. But yeah, from here, like, you can literally execute any sort of string you want. It was just kind of easier to sort of demo sort of the GET request, but yeah, I can swap it up for anything. Also, yeah, totally the first time I've ever needed to use reset as a function in the PHP suite of functionality. So that was interesting.
Well, it's an interesting name too for a function, right? Because you're saying it takes reset. It just takes the first item of an array. I would think reset would like completely wipe it clean. So the other items in the array would stay intact, right? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. And like I can rename that particular variable to anything. Actually, let's call it anything. And it will still run because it's literally just going to pick up the first value in like that it gets in the array. Actually, if I add a second one, it probably shouldn't run it. Test equals 1. Okay, no, It's trying to. Oh, it's because there's no semicolon in there. Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
I left off the semicolon. Oh, see? Stupid thing. Yeah. Oh, we've got a comment from somebody saying this kind of stuff that kept me up at night was when I was doing PHP dev long ago. We've all been there. The amount of times I've done a deployment and then had to go back and clean it up in my digital agency days. Oh, so many times. I still wake up in cold shivers.
Yeah, Fine Night. I think a little before you came in, we were talking a little bit about like the history of PHP. You know, it's kind of the snowball effect, right? Where things just kept on getting added and added, and you know, it's just rolling down a hill. So much momentum. Like, how are you going to stop it, right? Like, something that started for personal homepages is now one of the driving forces of the internet behind some of the biggest companies in the world. So. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation for lots of developers who are maintaining these systems. And yeah, I think a lot of people have the same feeling that you probably felt back then. Like there's one of these around every corner. It feels, in like PHP land. I think that's a sentiment that a lot of PHP devs definitely share. How do you feel about the threat landscape, Developersteve? Like, I know like there's a very extensive like community behind PHP development. I know like the ecosystem is like very unique, just due to how old PHP is. So, what do you think about that? I guess before we go from this RCE, folks, that was the RCE demo. Before we go from the RCE to the reverse shell, do you have any comments on that? Just any thoughts?
Yeah, no, interesting and good question. Just going back to another point too about how PHP still powers a lot of the internet. 70%, just saying, 70%. I always look every PHP dev that's still using it loves to highlight that. But it does power a lot of the internet, and yeah, kind of everywhere. And that actually isn't like made up mostly of WordPress sites, surprisingly as well, which is the other common misconception. But sort of on the threat side of things, I think there's a lot of I'm going to call it. Sort of communities within the PHP ecosystem that help maintain their various frameworks, not only maintain their various frameworks, but then contribute back to the core language set as well. So Laravel, Drupal, the WordPress crew, like they've all got really dedicated, amazing security teams that will jump on, vulnerabilities as they appear and push out updates super quick. Even the likes of Magento, we saw that earlier in the year. There was two vulnerabilities. One was caused by the other one, but anyway, two vulnerabilities that surfaced, and the community behind that pushed out some updates super fast to get those fixed, which is always amazing to see. So, and I think on a whole, like the frameworks, the platforms are only as strong as the communities behind them. So it does talk testament to to the amazing work that they do. Like any widely adopted, used language framework, etc. Like there's always those vulnerabilities appearing, but I think the difference is that community getting behind to pull together and help make the open source project be all it can be, which is always amazing. And we're all products of open source in some way. Like we've learned things from them, those communities, we contribute back, and that's what makes it so amazing. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. Definitely. I think we're all products of open source, definitely. Especially all these ecosystems are shaped differently too. Like a colleague of ours who y'all know, working on reports and stuff, reached out to me and showed me the stats for the report that they're working on, and they said the JavaScript numbers look wrong. How are there so many dependencies per project, like compared to the other languages? And I'm like, no, that's probably right. Like that's probably actually right. So yeah, I think everything looks so different from ecosystem to ecosystem, right? Like this DOM, for folks who weren't here for the last episode, just a little more background on DOM PDF, and then we'll move on to the meat of the vulnerability. But DOM PDF, for those who don't know, because I don't think we brought it up again, is the most popular, the most prevalent PDF generation sort of library for PHP. So it's relied on by a lot of people, a lot of businesses. It's basically, just part and parcel when it comes to doing business with PHP. So yeah, I think that's a little bit more about dompdf, and I think Developersteve would want to run into the reverse shell. I think we could pull that up.
Oh, that was the reverse shell part. But yeah, just going back to what you were, yeah.
I thought that was RC. My bad. I didn't see the shell.
Oh, it was kind of like RC, but then leading into reverse shell. Yeah, and that was one of the surprising things about this particular library, and I'm surprised there wasn't more I'm going to say fire put underneath it, because yeah, it is. This library is utilized by a lot of the ecosystem in a number of platforms, so it kind of affected everything. The good news is there's actually a fix. There's a patch for it out now too. So for those that are watching that are using dompdf to dynamically generate PDFs, which I'm a big fan of, it's an amazing library. Just this one little tiny function, well, made it not so great. But anyway, there is a fix out. So we were playing with 1.2.0. 1.2.1 has a fix in there as well. So I can show what the new library does, because I've tried it. But essentially, in the other library, in the font cache folder, it was storing those files as .php files. In the new version, it stores them as .ttf, which kind of makes a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. And essentially, when that cache builds, so when the PDF generator recognizes that there's a font that needs to be stored, it'll actually store that as a TTF and then add that to its own internal. There it is. Add that particular file to its own. There it is, font array. So you can see there it's actually added the gotcha as part of its font cache array, so it can be recalled later. So essentially that fixed it. I tried a number of things to try, as you can see there. This is one of my test apps, and I tried with the latest library, tried a number of things to try and get that .php file to generate, but sadly, well, thankfully, not even sadly, thankfully it did not. So that is now fixed.
It's a little sad too. Now you're thinking like a vulnerability researcher. You want to be able to find a bypass. You're looking for a bypass, which is awesome. Like that's 100% what you should do in this case. So I think first CVE is more than enough. You're already thinking like a vulnerability researcher. So I think we'll have to move you from DevRel. We'll have to move you to the security research team. So yeah, I really like this. So this is awesome. Can I ask like how you were exfiltrating like the results or like the output like from the reverse shell commands?
You mean like getting the results back out?
Yeah.
So the way I was, just switch window back. In this example the way I built it into the demo was using a GET request, so you could literally use the same shell type just to view it on a web page, etc. Using that particular font, there we go. You can do a socket listen so that it'll just respond back as well. So once you've got like that eval, that ex, I mean, there's like 3 different commands you could use in there instead of eval. I just used eval was the first one I landed on that was working. But yeah, once you've got that socket open, you can also use this to get a process running so that it just stays active on server and sort of keeps running as well. So but from there, like you can, like, it's literally like finding a key to a mysterious like padlock.
Yeah, you could use this right now and get bug bounty payouts. What you could do is basically, and it's completely legal, so you could basically just use this, right? And then like Developersteve said, open a socket, use a netcat listener on your host, on your laptop, on your desktop, whatever you're doing, your VM, wherever you're doing your vuln research, your bug bounty hunting. And all these PHP websites that are using this to generate PDFs, if you have a way to interact with that endpoint, the endpoint's not entirely secure, et cetera, you can actually make this happen. You can establish just a netcat listener on your local host. And after you hack or you identify somebody using dompdf, right? and you're either using a framework that uses dompdf, right, which is very easy to find out. Just go to GitHub, take a look at things using dompdf, and then you can go around to bug bounty programs. You can find companies that are known to use PHP, and there you go, happy hunting, and there's your rent, and and a couple of write-ups. So yeah, it's definitely a good time, and you can thank Developersteve personally, via email or something if he helps you pay your rent, bug bounty hunters. So yeah, but 100%, this is a gold mine. This is a treasure trove for a hacker, right? Both a good hacker or a bad hacker, right? Somebody doing bug bounties or somebody who's trying to do nefarious activity. So that's how you'd go about, researching. You doing this as a researcher, doing this legitimately, and informing people that like they might have this sort of like oversight in their project or their product or whatever they're releasing. So that's how this works. That's awesome. I mean, I'm really glad we got to have you back so soon, Developersteve. I joked about making you during the last episode. I joked about making you wake up early. I didn't think I'd do it so soon, but yeah, I guess PHP had different plans for us, right?
It did. Actually, that's a good point with the Von hunting. Wait, can I get my screen back up?
Yeah.
I was going to give everyone. I was going to add to that, and so this is the composer page for dompdf, and you can look at places where this particular libraries are dependent on. PHP Office gets listed a couple times. In fact, there's 70,000 installs of that. So this can also be handy for capture the flags as well, in identifying ways to get into a server.
Is that 1,000 or million?
70 million. Yeah.
Sorry, 70 million. It's early. I need another
that's
coffee.
Huge.
Yeah, and even in Laravel, 21 million. Cashier, because like I was saying last episode, this particular Laravel library is used for Stripe billing services. Because PDF generation, I mean, it's a lot of receipt generating essentially. So yeah, once you identify a platform or an app running with particular functionality on a server, then potentially it is a way to bug bounty or win that flag.
Yeah, definitely. I think I saw a pretty funny tweet, and it was one of the people working on Laravel, and they tweeted at like Elon Musk, and they're like, "Hey, Elon, if you want to redo Twitter and Laravel, just like let me know." So
I saw that. Yeah,
funny.
that was funny. Yeah, add features every week.
Yep. I'll add features every week. Yep. Oh, that was great. That was great.
Yep.
All right, so let me just kind of recap and unpack like everything kind of went through so far. Is one, we talked about dompdf being the vulnerability that we did show in the previous episode, and that's what's like providing this opening for us to do a reverse shell is what we want to do. And a reverse shell is it's basically being able to, one, we got to be able to execute, somehow inject our own code onto the operating system, the host, and then be able to receive the results of commands that you might run and like just transmit to it and get responses back, right? So that's reverse shell. Am I describing that correctly, gents?
Yeah, it's just like any way that you could get like a command prompt to a remote machine is a reverse shell.
Okay.
So like if I can somehow get a box on your machine by saying alakazam, like that's my reverse shell. You know what I mean? So it could be through anything. It could be through curl, it could be through parameters, but like you just need a way to see the result. You know what I mean? So like if you don't see the result, it's not a full like reverse shell. If you're just injecting commands and hoping, crossing your fingers, you're just throwing commands, then you can call it an RCE, but it's not like a reverse shell. You're not getting the command back. RCEs sometimes, usually they're confined to like a framework or an app or something. If you're getting a reverse shell on a host, you usually you can pivot around and do a lot of other stuff, like a lot more easy. So that's really yeah, just a little more on that. But yeah, you got it right. It's just a way for you to submit a command, just as if I was sitting on your box, like on the CLI, just another way to submit a command, but for me to do it remotely. So yeah, you can usually establish these through RCEs, which is pretty awesome for a researcher.
And that was super helpful. Thank you, Kyle. So it sounds like typically RCEs provide the capability of being able to execute a reverse shell, but not always is what I think I gathered from what you said. Is that correct?
Yeah, totally. So there are also ways to bypass, a lot of the sanitization that people put in place. So sometimes it's a matter of trying one thing, trying to get a reverse shell like 100 different ways or something, So it's difficult for sure. It's not the easiest way to pwn a box. It's like pie in the sky. Like if you get a reverse shell, like that's it. Like your day's made. Like you're gonna get a huge payout, right? So that's kind of usually how that ends up going. But I think the most important thing about a reverse shell is usually like you have a foothold on the network. Like I think we talked about it, Brian, in like episode like 1 or 2, like the second episode. We talked about like establishing like a foothold on a box and like what that really means. So this is kind of like prime example of that. Like you're establishing a foothold on a box. You're going to be able to take a look at the network with a little more discretion, right? You're going to be able to take a look at what folks are running, what their infrastructure, what their stack looks like. You're going to be able to see what other type of boxes and services this box is communicating with, and then that definitely stretches like the parameters of like what you're able to do on that system in that environment. So it's about establishing a foothold really, but it's not always possible. RCE can sometimes lead to a reverse shell being implanted on a box, but then that's like that's like pwnaged, like you're owned at that point.
Yeah. So, and then to dissect this a little bit further and get technical into this specific one, Developersteve, while what you demonstrated was like one way that you found possible to establish a reverse shell through this dompdf vulnerability, it sounds like you're saying there's probably other possibilities, other code options to help establish that beyond what you just demonstrated. This is just the tip of the iceberg almost, right?
Totally is. Actually, one thing I don't think we talked about, that I hadn't mentioned even before coming on the show, but I did go look at other PDF libraries because I figured once I kind of knew, that would get a giggle. But yeah, thinking like a security researcher, I thought, well, this is an established way to get access. Like, surely other PDF libraries are probably doing something similar. And I went through a number of different languages looking at a whole bunch of PDF generators. It turns out this is the only one that uses style sheets as part of its output with a HTML to PDF generator.
Oh.
So yeah, at least I couldn't find any others. And I looked in NPM. I actually went outside PHP. I went NPM, went pip, and a couple of other languages just to have a look around. So I couldn't find any others, but I'm on the lookout. So if anyone finds one, please reach out.
That's great. I think that's awesome. That's exactly what security researchers do, like professional ones, with like 30 CVEs under their belt. So you're well on your way. I think that's how you do it. So yeah, you're doing exactly what I would say you should do. Like if you're already looking at PDF generation libraries, you sort of, what people do is they'll take a look at one component for open source. Like somebody will take a look at Nginx proxy or something, and then just like really dive into it, learn everything they can, and then maybe they'll move to another proxy once they've exhausted every single possible route to a CVE that they can uncover. So I think this is hopefully the start of a beautiful journey for you, Developersteve, into collecting these CVEs, and we'll create like a trophy wall. You've made some awesome trophy designs for Sneak. Stay tuned for those, folks. We're probably going to be unveiling some of those during the SneakCon CTF. Hopefully, fingers crossed. If everything works in our favor here, we'll have some cool trophies from Developersteve for you, some custom made ones. And but yeah, I think this is awesome. Really glad that you found this, and glad that I gotta guide you a little bit. And I hope you continue to do more. I'll throw you more challenges whenever we have another cool sort of PDF. Whenever we have a cool PHP vulnerability, we'll see if we can throw a challenge along with it. And Developersteve will probably answer it for us before anyone else again. So I'm looking forward to it, because then we can just keep inviting you back on the show. You're going to be an early riser, Developersteve. We're making you wake up really early.
This is fine. Actually, there's one. Oh, maybe this is a challenge for you. But so
throwing it back at
the reverse card. You throw reverse card on me.
Reverse.
I need a gauntlet and like throw the gauntlet down. No, that's a duel. Anyway, so recently we launched C++ scanning for fingerprinting and scanning C++ libraries. So interestingly, C++ is built into everything, including quantum. So in theory, because there's some interesting stuff happening. NVIDIA's got like a SDK for sort of bridging traditional computing, classical computing, I don't know what phrase we can, normal computing to the quantum realm. So in theory, you could get a quantum CVE right about now. So there you go. That in itself is a challenge. Get the first quantum CVE.
We could take a look at the course material I made. We can talk about some like theoretical quantum attacks, things that people haven't been able to actually do yet. And yeah, maybe we can find a way to do it. But there are quite a few, and yeah, I think quantum circuits are definitely kind of confusing. It's just like throw away everything you know about computers, like just throw it all away. It's all garbage at that point.
Yeah.
But it's incredible. I think what we'll be able to do, Developersteve, is totally just take a look at these different categories of like quantum vulnerabilities and maybe do a couple POCs from. But who knows? A lot of it's still theoretical. A lot of it's still just we know that it's possible because of physics, sort of thing. But we haven't proved it in code yet. So it's funny how the table turns. It's like we can do this with computers, but like now we got to prove why. And now it's like, okay, now we gotta prove we know we can do this with physics, but now we got to prove we can do it with computers, I guess. So it's like kind of funny how there's that sort of like, I don't know, it's definitely a different problem, right, altogether. So very interesting stuff. But let's see, we can break some more ground. This is just the first of many. You start with a reverse shell from RCE, and then you move on to quantum theory, right? That's a normal progression of security research. So I think it'll be fun. We should just go for it. Who knows? We'll learn a lot. We can write an article or two, but yeah, I think it would definitely be worth it. Even if we don't find anything, I'm totally down. Always down to talk quantum. I feel like we just talk about quantum all the time. We're like, oh, forget work. Like we're just going to talk about quantum stuff. Like.
Cool. Yeah. Do you both? I have like a couple more questions that are in mind. If you both have a little bit more time, are we good with that?
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So Kyle and Developersteve, it sounded like but I'm curious, Developersteve, since it's your first reverse shell and CVE to report what the experience was like. But it sounds like folks that are experienced in doing this stuff, they might have like canned scripts. And you mentioned you had a course too, right, Kyle? So in that course, are there like typical scripts that researchers will use once they establish a reverse shell to see just how far they can stretch the boundaries once they get in that place? Is that kind of how it flows, or what's the process like? I'm curious to learn more as somebody that's new to this too.
Yeah, I guess so if you're in a really familiar space, right, like Developersteve and PHP land, right, and he's like pwnning some PHP boxes, then he'd probably have some ideas of stuff he'd do after he gets on the box, right, in order to establish what sort of connectivity that box has, what it's done, what sort of services are running on it, what sort of data is on it. So, there'd be different directories, different locations you'd look in. Yeah, you'd probably see, okay, if a directory named common PHP application directory name is more than 500 megabytes, let's exfiltrate that and then examine it later, et cetera, et cetera. So you'd create like a toolkit, right? And then I would run dompdf RCE to reverse shell sh. And it would maybe hit all these machines that we identified at the same time and try to figure out, okay, can I establish reverse shell, return a status code 0 or 1, export those IPs to a list that it succeeded on, and then I can operate on those. So as I would go like down an attack chain, that's how I would attack an adversary to figure out the extent of what's possible. You get all the machines, all the hosts. You're probably not going to hit all those. Realistically, you're not going to have a 100% success rate. No hacker does. But yeah, you're going to hit all these things that you found during recon, right? And then from recon, you're going to move into sort of like exploitation. And then after exploitation, you want to establish your foothold. And then after you establish your foothold, you want to gain more information. Now you're in there. You can sort of like live off the land. That's something that we talk about a lot in hacking. Living off the land is using the tools that are already there. So I would do all sorts of things that we normally refer to as just computer system forensics, huge blanket thing, but just basically checking out everything on the system, the files, the folders, right? And you can automate all that totally, right? Because now you have a reverse shell. So yeah, you'd sort of create a runtime or a routine for like these familiar environments, and then you'd sort of like fine tune that to exactly what you're trying to accomplish for like that encounter. That's how I would usually do something like that.
Interesting. And when you say live off the land, I mean, I just naturally think, oh, maybe you have a garden in your yard or something, and you're living off the land that way. But yeah, I like that term.
So living off the land, yeah, you're using whatever you can. You're using whatever tools come with the operating system. Like all the sort of underlying components of it. you're not bringing in your own tools, but rather you're just like using your adversary's components against them, so to speak.
Gotcha.
They
So
have a full
Developersteve,
robust operating system, so you're just going at it. But yeah, let's pass it over to Developer
for
Steve.
sure. Developersteve, with that question in mind, what was your experience like trying to? I mean, it helped, yes, probably having the PHP experience, but what was the experience like trying to find a way to get that established? Did it take a long time, or was it quick because you had that experience? What was that experience like?
Just quick side note is I love that phrase now, live off the land. And I almost think we need a sneak capture the flag sticker for that. Just saying.
Ooh,
I think that
yes.
needs to be a thing.
We'll have like a patch that looks like a cow just eating grass or something.
Oh, I'm totally gonna make that today. May have made stickers before in my dev rel time.
Do we do work, or do we just talk about quantum and stickers?
Yes, and build funky video scenes. What was the question again? Oh yeah, no, knowing so sidetracked. Knowing PHP totally helped, and sort of even knowing. I mean, I knew about the reset function, for example. I just had never really needed to use it. So knowing that was even an option in the PHP landscape, to go back to living off the land. Was just one of the things I knew existed and was an option to use. So looking for workarounds to try and get around the whole named input variable was one way I was able to come up with. Just going back to what Kyle was saying too. Yeah, there's ways, and I could use that knowledge to also understand the layout of like a PHP application. So depending on the framework it was running in, whether it's Laravel, Drupal, a custom app, there's certain folder structures that I know I'm going to be looking for. WordPress, for example, which that library is used in a couple of WordPress plugins. So knowing that the database config file is stored in the root of the server generally, I can get like access to that and then get access to the database, and from there, like I've got login. Depending on what I'm needing to do on the server. At least. And that's totally leveraging like just having deployed so many websites over the years, or so many PHP applications over the years. So
gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And is there like a common place that PHP stores maybe like environment variables that connect to like different services and credentials that might be needed, or tokens that might be needed to access other APIs? There's something like that can be discovered too, I guess.
Yeah, depending on the application type. I mean, .env files kind of common, but it depends on the app. So WordPress, for example, stores it in a config file in a PHP config file in the root of the application, unless it's by default, unless it's moved sort of elsewhere. Then like from there, you've got your database credentials, you've got your access tokens, you've got whatever third-party services are being stored in there, sort of available. Kind of get everywhere from there. Literally, like finding the keys.
The keys to the kingdom, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's sweet. So my next question, and potentially our last one, is, so you all talked about like exploiting the vulnerability to the remote code execution to establish a reverse shell. You've discovered this now. What do you do? Like you're a good guy in this case, right? And you want to let people know about this possibility. What are the steps that you have to take to do that?
Who's this one for? Is that what
Developersteve, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience? I'm just going to make another joke and say, are you sure he's a good guy? He's wearing a hoodie. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I kind of was hesitant to say that out loud, but
Wait, I have a sound effect for this. Evil laugh.
Nice.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, like going back to that whole we're all products of open source, like we've and that's the thing I love about these open source communities is everyone does come together to fix this sort of stuff and make sure everyone's kept safe, like end users, the infrastructure. End of the day, like someone's built this application to try and run a business, to try and build something out for people, something meaningful out for people. So we need to help protect them in particular. So Disclosing, obviously, in a safe and right way is always the thing. And so, yeah, I submitted a CVE, went through the process, went through MITRE, some help from Kyle. It was the first time. It was an interesting, really interesting process. There's some things I'm currently working with some of the PHP community to help streamline the process for reporting a little bit more, just because I thought, I thought it could be a bit more streamlined, and again, sort of bringing together community types to try and help fix that. So I'm on a bit of a mission now. I'm totally on a mission. I need Mission Impossible music for this one. But yeah, looking to put together a open source PHP open source library consortium security group of sorts to help review some of the CVEs for the PHP open source world, because it needs some help. It needs to be easier, I think, for these things to be reported, and a way for the community to come together to review them. So watch this space. This might be another episode. I'll get up early again.
I think we need a clap track, so like for moments like this. Like, not only are you doing, like the thing that tons of developers and security researchers do, right? Like reporting these vulnerabilities and helping folks, arrive at ways to fix it, and teaching folks about it, doing the awareness. But also, you're just trying to change the process overall and make it easier for people to do just that. So I think that's going above and beyond. So definitely living out our values on the street, Developersteve, even outside of work. So and 24-hour PHP live stream, make it happen. LeRon loves PHP, folks. You should hit him up all the time on Twitter. Tag him in all things PHP. He loves PHP.
He loves Java too.
And Java. Yeah, loves Java. So make sure you stay in touch with all of us. We're going to be doing a lot more stuff like this all the time, different languages. I'm just kidding. LeRon Tall's a JavaScript guru and a GitHub star. Definitely somebody that you should keep an eye on. So 24-hour PHP stream hosted by LeRon, and with special guest Developersteve. You heard it here, folks. That's all. That's definitely going to happen. So
LeRon, what is LeRon doing up right now? That's what
I don't know. I think he wants to run a subathon. We should just have LeRon run a subathon, Brian.
Yeah.
I think if we show him that concept, LeRon's going to be like, yes, subathon time. So we'll have to do a subathon, and it'll probably be for a good cause. And yeah, we'll drag in all these folks. We'll bring in back the familiar faces, and maybe we'll have some fun and talk about vulnerabilities and fix some open source libraries if we can. Find ways to make it a productive use of our time, and hopefully program in all sorts of content like this. So if that's something you're interested in, leave some comments in the chat, leave some comments under the YouTube video if you're watching this after the live stream. But thank you, everyone. Folks, anything else you want to touch on here before we sign off for the day?
Steve?
Nothing really for me. Just thanks for letting me back on, and thanks for the challenge. It was fun.
Thank you for doing it. I'm really glad, because I just sort of threw it out there. I was like, nobody's going to do it. But I'm really glad you messaged me afterwards and all that stuff, and I'm really glad that you decided to take it upon yourself to give these people a new bug to fix. So anytime we can do that, I think it's a win. Anytime we can show folks that like you should pay attention to security. Security shouldn't be an afterthought. Otherwise, we're gonna start poking around in your projects. I think that's a great thing. So I think hoodies up in honor of Steve's first CVE, folks. Hoodies up.
I have mine,
but
it's out of view. Sorry.
Oh, my bad.
Imagine my hat.
Wait,
you got the hat. You're still covered. So
I do have a It goes for a long time. So
the glory and the power. He's got it all. Developersteve. So thank you everyone for coming. I think we're probably going to call it now. I think we've definitely goofed off enough. I think it's time for us to get back to work and just kind of plan the next one of these. I think I'll start getting on that. So I'll probably rope you into that, Brian. Just the usual suspects. Me and Brian will be here. We don't know who else will be here. It might just be us. Might be another guest. But as always, this is Vulns Unleashed, and we're so happy that you could make it here today. So thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
LeRon. See ya. Thanks for coming.